What's going on, guys? Attorney Gerald Griggs, a Justicefighter, with part two of Georgia Politics Simplified. I hope you guys are having a great, restful Sunday. Was a great weekend. Did a lot of things out in the community, as you saw earlier. We were out feeding the homeless, and it was a great event. But I wanted to come back. It's Sunday, so we wanted to delve back into politics here in the state of Georgia, and let's talk about the other individuals that are on the ballot. And we're going to break down the statewide offices that are on the ballot. And so let's start with the attorney generals of the state of Georgia. As you know, the attorney general is on the ballot. I want to break down the duties and responsibilities of the attorney general and then the candidates and their positions. So the Attorney General of Georgia is a statewide executive office which was established in 1797. The Georgia Constitution made the Attorney General a constitutional officer, and he became the legal advisor to the governor of Georgia and the other departments of the state government. The Attorney General is elected for 4-year terms during the federal midterm elections and does not face any term limits, which means you can be the Attorney General for however long you want to be the Attorney General, and the voters elect you to stay there. The Law Department's mission statement, and that's the department that the Attorney General oversees, the Law Department, is to serve the citizens of the state of Georgia by providing legal representation of the highest quality to the agencies, officers, and employees of the state government, and by honorably and vigorously carrying out the constitutional and statutory responsibilities of the Attorney General. So simply put, the Attorney General is the top lawyer for the state. He represents the state in civil matters and criminal matters, and is and serves at the pleasure of the governor. But he is an elected statewide officer, and there are two candidates that are vying for the top position as the top lawyer in the state. The Democrat is Charlie Bailey. He's a Democrat. He's a former assistant district attorney for Fulton County. He's a former gang prosecutor. Grew up in West Georgia and has practiced law with Governor Roy Barnes before joining Paul Howard in the gang unit in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. And the other candidate is Chris Carr, who is the incumbent. He is the current sitting Attorney General. And his position platform is to protect the Constitution, to end federal overreach, to end human trafficking, to crack down on elder abuse, and to combat the opioid epidemic through opioid abuse, and also to crack down on gangs. I looked at both of their websites, and they really didn't go into concrete detail of how they plan on doing that, but that's their platforms. One is a Democrat, Charlie Bailey. The other is a Republican, Chris Carr. They're relatively young lawyers, so to speak. Looks like they're both in their mid-40s, and basically their platform seems to be the same with regard to a lot of issues. You know, I was on their website, did see a lot on the website that differentiated the two and their platform. So you need to check that out. But again, the two candidates are Charlie Bailey, Democrat, former Fulton County Assistant District Attorney in charge of the gang unit. I grew up in West Georgia, and Chris Carr, who's the current Attorney General, and their platforms are basically the same. So that's the office of the Attorney General for the state of Georgia. There's also the Secretary of State is on the ballot. As you know, Brian Kemp is the incumbent, and he will vacate the position, and he's seeking higher office, which I talked about in the earlier video from last weekend. Secretary of State of Georgia is an elected constitutional officer, is responsible for a wide range of services and regulatory duties, in addition to being the keeper of the Great Seal of Georgia, the custodian of the state flag, and other state symbols. Secretary of State also chairs the Claims Advisory Board, which receives, investigates, and hears civil claims against the state. His responsibility of the Secretary of State's office includes supervising and monitoring the elections, providing campaign finance disclosure, managing and preserving public records, providing educational programming about the Capitol, and licensing, monitoring, and registering professionals and businesses. The office includes the Division of Archives, the Elections, Corporations, Securities and Business Regulation, Professional Licensing Board, and of course, maintaining the state capitol. So he chairs certain agencies like the Georgia Commission on the Holocaust, Drug Georgia Drugs and Narcotics Agency, the State Ethics Commission, and the Georgia Real Estate Commission and the Appraisers Board. So those are some of the duties of the Secretary of State. And there are 3 candidates for the office of Secretary of State. Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican. He's an engineer by trade. And of course, the 2 other candidates for Attorney General, I thought it goes without saying, they are attorneys. So in order to be the Attorney General, you have to be a member in good standing of the bar for at least, I believe the code says 7 years. But back to the Secretary of State. So Brad Raffensperger is a Republican. He's an engineer. John Barrow is a Democrat. He's an attorney. And then Smythe Duval is a libertarian, and he works in information technology. And from looking at their websites, they kind of distinguish their policy platform. Mr. Raffensperger supports a fair tax. He supports strengthening the voter ID. He's a conservative. He's on the conservative track on trafficking, and he supports paper ballots. Mr. John Barrow platform is to protect the right to vote, make it easier to do business and create jobs in Georgia, to protect seniors from financial predators, and to prevent professional fraud. And Mr. Smythe Duval from his website indicates that he supports ranked voting. He's against gerrymandering. He wants to remove the problematic voting machines, the electronic voting machines. He supports same-day voter registration, and he supports term limits on all candidates. So those are the platforms. And again, the Secretary of State is very important, especially considering we just had Secretary of State who was the vote suppressor in chief. So we need a Secretary of State that will support access to the ballot, voter integrity, and to make sure that voter suppression does not continue in this state. And so looking at the platforms, it seems that, of course, we have one conservative, one slightly liberal-leaning individual, and then another actual libertarian. So make sure you educate yourselves on their platforms. Again, I just kind of outlined their platforms and the duties and responsibilities of the Secretary of State. It's very important when it comes to our voter integrity and voter access. As you know, we just finished coming back from Randolph County, where we had to stop the voter suppression that was going on down there. So we need to make sure that these candidates flesh out their platforms a little bit more on how they're going to achieve these platforms and become more accountable to the voters. Let's move on to the Georgia Superintendent of Schools. Georgia Superintendent of Schools is on the ballot in November. The Georgia Superintendent of Schools is a state executive position in the Georgia state government. The superintendent is the administrative head of the Georgia Department of Education and oversees the state's K through 12 public education system. The superintendent is charged with instituting the policies of the State Board of Education and managing the operation of the state school system. He is popularly elected for 4 terms during the federal midterm, which is coming up in November. And we have 3 candidates on the ballot for the Georgia school superintendent. We have Arthur Thornton, who's a Democrat. He is a retired military officer, and he's in information technology. We have Richard Woods, who's the current state superintendent, and that's his current occupation as state superintendent. And then we have Sonia Francis Roll, who is the write-in candidate. Ms. Roll does not really have her platform on her website, so I don't know what her platform positions are. But Mr. Thornton, his platform is to empower families and educators, providing essential resources to students, restoring accountability to support educators, and to fight for fully funded public schools. Mr. Richard Woods says his platform is committed to classroom-centered, child-focused policies, safe and secure schools, to stand up to Washington bureaucrats, and to have a curriculum that's Georgia-owned and Georgia-grown standards. So again, both candidates really have not fleshed out their policy stances and how they want to implement this with the state school system. But I can tell you that one candidate is for school choice, and that would be Mr. Woods, and the other candidate is all about fully funding public education so that we can make sure the public education is of top quality in the state. So they've definitely carved out two distinct, diametrically opposed philosophies on public education. So again, I would advise go to their websites, oathofthornton.com, as well as woodsforsuper.com, to see how they're going to flesh this out. But one is a retired military officer and the other is a state school superintendent. Let's move on to the Georgia Commission for Agriculture. Of course, it's on the November ballot. The Georgia Commissioner for Agriculture is a state executive position in the Georgia state government. The commissioner heads the Department of Agriculture, which is responsible for regulating and promoting Georgia's agricultural industry. Like many states, Georgia's state executive officers, the commissioner is elected to a 4-year term during the federal midterms. So basically, they control the policy and implementation of all our agricultural laws and make sure that agriculture is running smoothly here in the state of Georgia. There are 2 candidates on the ballot: Fred Swan, who's a software developer, he's a Democrat, and Gary Black, who is a Republican. He's the owner of Harmony Grove Farms, and they have policy platforms outlined on their websites. One is swanforgeorgia.com and then votegaryblack.com. Mr. Swan's platform is promoting Georgia agriculture, protecting and expanding Georgia's agriculture, ensuring safe food for our children and families, and protecting consumers. Mr. Black's platform is strengthening career pathways into agriculture, helping local food systems flourish, educate as well as regulate. So he believes in educating about agriculture as well as regulating it, and to promote animal health. So again, you can go to their websites to get more into their policy goals. But again, Fred Swan and Gary Black are on the ballot for the position of Commissioner of Agriculture. Commissioner of Labor. The Georgia Commissioner of Labor is a state executive position in the Georgia state government. The commissioner is responsible for implementing the state's labor regulations, operating its unemployment insurance and rehabilitation programs, and producing statistics and research covering Georgia's labor market. Now, as you know, Georgia is #1 for business, and we've seen quite a bit of growth and jobs being created over the last 4 years and into this last 2 years. And so there are 2 candidates on the ballot. One is the incumbent, Mark Butler. He's a real estate professional. And then the other is Richard Keekley, the Democrat, who's a college professor. You can go and get more of their platforms on www.markbutler.org, or you can go to keetleyforgeorgia.com. I have not researched their platforms yet, so in the subsequent videos, I will make sure I outline their platforms. But again, you can go to markbutler.org or Richard Keetley or keetleyforgeorgia.com to check out their policy platforms. We also have the Georgia Insurance and Fire Safety Commissioner. So this is the person who deals with the insurance regulation and, of course, fire safety. And Georgia Insurance and Fire Safety Commissioner is a state elected executive position in the Georgia state government. The commissioner heads the Georgia Office of Insurance and Safety, which is responsible for regulating the state's insurance industry and ensuring fire safety in the state. The commissioner is elected 4-year terms in the federal midterm elections. And there are 3 candidates on the ballot. Donnie Foster is a libertarian. He's a truck driver. Janice Laws is the Democrat. She's self-employed. And Jim Beck is the current insurance commissioner. He previously worked in public relations. Janice Laws is a Democrat. She's an African-American female from Metro Atlanta. Donnie Foster, again, is a libertarian, and Jim Beck is the current commissioner. You can go to their websites to hear their policy platforms, but what I can say is that looking at their websites, they are being very detailed in their policy platforms. And again, in the next video, I will cover these last: the labor commissioner, the insurance commissioner, and the public service commission, as we've had to go through a lot of websites. Public Service Commission is a quasi-executive legislative state body responsible for regulating Georgia's public utilities. What does that mean? The power people. So like electric, gas, telecommunication, transportation firms, they're regulated by the Public Service Commission. Unlike many similar bodies nationwide, the Georgia Public Safety, the Public Service Commission does not regulate water, sewer, or gas providers. The commission is composed of 5 popularly elected members who serve in staggered 6-year terms, and the Metro Atlanta District 3 is on the ballot, as well as the Western District is on the ballot. The Metro Atlanta District has 3 individuals running. Chuck Eaton, who's the Republican and the incumbent, who's the current Public Service Commissioner. Lindy Miller, the Democrat, she's from Decatur, businesswoman, is on the ballot. And then Ryan Graham, the Libertarian from Atlanta, who's a project manager, is on the ballot. Full public disclosure, I went to school with Lindy. We went to Woodward together. And so I may be a little biased, but I would still advise you to go to each one of their websites, LindyMillerforGeorgia.com. You can go to EatonForGeorgia.com, or you can go to Graham4Georgia.com to see their policy platforms. And again, in the subsequent video, I will outline these. In the Western District, District 5, we have Don A. Rudolph, a Democrat, a consultant. We have John Turpish, the Libertarian software developer. And we have Tricia Pridemore, the Republican small business owner, all running for the PSC. And again, I will add their platforms in a later video, but RandolphForGeorgia.com, VoteTurpish.com, and PrideMorePSC.com for more information on those offices. So those are the statewide executive offices that are on the ballot, what the actual office does, and the candidates that are on the ballot. And what I can say in researching most of the statewide officers, there's not a lot of information out there about the policy platforms, or even there's not a lot of information out there. And so what I would advise is you need to do your research. You need to go and research, Google these individuals to see the work, the body of work they've done before they offer themselves for public office, because we're not really having a lot of conversation about the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, the Labor Commissioner, the Agriculture Commissioner, and of course the Public Service Commission. And these are all very important statewide offices that we need to know are on the ballot, and we need to know more about these individuals. A lot of these individuals, this is the first time I've ever heard their name, and they're offering themselves for public office. And so that's concerning, especially to me as somebody who's pretty versed in politics and concerned about the voter knowing the absolute correct information about these individuals. So what I would say is, again, I'm going to continue to bring this information. The last 3 offices, I will bring you their policy positions so that you can be informed. What I would ask you to do is share this video as we continue to break down politics. We continue to break down the offices on the ballot in Georgia, what the offices do, how they affect the policies here in the state, and what you need to know before you go into the ballot, before you go into the cast your vote at the ballot box, before you start early voting. Again, remember, the last day to register to vote is October the 9th. Early voting begins that week after that and goes all the way up to the election, which is November the 6th. It is the midterms. I will be bringing you in subsequent videos the federal offices that are up on the ballot. That means District 1, District 2, District 6, congressional races that may be in your jurisdiction, as this video is going through all of Georgia. And then we'll break it down to the judge level, and of course down to district attorneys that are on the ballot, and all the way down. But I've covered now the statewide offices that are on the ballot. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. Please share the video so that more people will know what's at stake in this election. It's not just the top ticket for governor. It's all the way down the ballot. You have statewide offices that I just broke down that are on the ballot, and we need to make sure we educate it. So again, it's Attorney Gerald Griggs, a Justicefighter. Please Make sure you educate yourself on the individuals, but more importantly, you get yourself to the polls. You make sure you register, and we get out and vote, because it's our Georgia, and we want to make sure that our Georgia reflects all the citizens, and we want to make sure that Gold Dome hears us loud and clear. So again, I'll be bringing you the statewide candidates for representative and senator in the next video, as well as your congressional officers that are on the ballot. So it's Attorney Griggs, the Justicefighter, signing off. I'll see you in the next video.